Voyant refers to its client onboarding solution as Voyant the Game. The goal here is to allow the client to get into the system and start building the plan themselves. Now, this is an option. It doesn't have to be used by firms, but for those that are looking for something a bit more digital, a bit more interactive, this is a great way to sort of engage the client in a new way, to redesign the value proposition of the advice proposition altogether. Really, the goal here is to start focusing on something other than just dollars, but to really get them started talking about things that are personal to themselves. A lot of firms come in thinking this is going to be a retirement discussion and don't realize that there's so much more that's interlaced here that we have to get through before maybe it is retirement. Or maybe it's a transition of wealth discussion, but maybe there's a lot in the way before we even get to that. Maybe there's other goals that we want to talk about before we get to the bigger legacy issues. So the game is a way for consumers to sort of self-describe, to get started on the plan and realize that this is going to be a different solution. And we've tried to do that at Voyant in a way that is meant to be drag and drop, clickable, so that we can move things around and do different things together, but engage the client in things that are important to them. So really, as we look at the screen in front of you, we're looking at a series of nudges. These nudges don't necessarily have to be perfect, but the idea is to get the client thinking about the things that are important to them based on where they're at in the life stage. It's not restricted by the advisor. It's not the advisor talking about products yet. It's really the idea of let's get the client focused on what's important to them and what's important to their family and what might be in the way. Now, in some cases, we've already added things in. So, for example, retirement is one of those goals that's already inside the plan that we've put in for everything. But really the thought is here is to get the client thinking about things that they may not otherwise. And then we're going to talk in a bit about how we prioritize and deal with them. So some are meant to be fun. So Sail the Open Seas is things like buying a boat. Midlife crisis is actually something that everybody's a joke, but it's something's going to happen along the way. Some are more serious. So for example, a lifetime of care, whether it be for a disabled child or a parent that's getting in their later years where you know you might have responsibility for helping them. The goal is to allow this discussion to happen somewhat freely in every step of the way and to really get that client engaged in terms of those discussions along the way. So I've added some goals into the system to get started. The next thing we're going to do is do a bit of data entry to just do a bit of self-description. I'm not going to be too clever here. We'll say this is James Madison and that he's 45. We'll click done. Now, a couple of other concepts we're going to use later on. And this is very important where we start talking about timing our goals and prioritizing our goals. These are new data elements that don't really exist in a lot of other systems of record. The idea of how important is this goal in relation to other goals and then when they're going to happen are a real big deal to clients because it's going to help us in the solution decide later on where it is it's going to live in terms of, as we say, priority. How is it we're going to decide which goals get funded and don't get funded? So now we've come back, we've got a screen, we've got James. I'm going to quickly just show the ease of use here. Now, I should make the point, this is an integrated platform. If we had single sign-on in place, I wouldn't have to sign in to begin with. If we had data coming in from an external system, a lot of this could be refilled and put into place for us before we get here. In this case, I don't. I'm on a demo system, so I'll quickly just add data into here. A bit of fun. I can add a child into the system as well. So I'll put child. I don't remember James Madison's kids' names, but I'll say that this one's 12. And we'll go from there. Now, the interesting part here is we play through this, we can look at anybody's timeline. I've switched the years and said, look, the family's main goals, one is that in higher education, when he's 18, they want to pay for university. And then next, in a few years, when we get out here, they think when he's 28, there's going to be, they have a dream of having a big family event and a wedding they can go for. We can continue on and drive through this. Next, I can start entering in a bit of data. If I want, I'm just going to once again make some things up so that we can drive forward a bit. But here we're just collecting data along the way. Now, I should make the point as we start getting to other informations. As I said before, if we had Oh gosh, I have to look for tractors. One moment. There we go. Here we go. So we've actually now, something that's interesting just happened, the little green window that popped up in the upper right, we've actually created a client record in the Voyant system that I'll jump over to in a second and show you. But here I can actually start collecting the financial information. Now, I should make the point in the platform that at any moment I can stop. And we have firms that decide at different points, this is all I really want to collect. Collect the goal information. Let's get the client excited about planning in general. But then I'll take it over here from the financial side. Some use it as lead generation. They get the client in and the next thing they say is, hey, we're done with this. We don't need to go any further. But here I'm going to actually collect a bit of information. I'll just say I'm going to make up numbers for the speed of the demo and just say it's $50,000. The fairy tale wedding we'll say is $100,000. We'll save those. You can see our friends down here, the little icons at the bottom showed up, have retirement in the system as well. Even though we're still using the child's timeline. Now we can review things. So here we're starting to get into this idea of everything that's inside the system, all the pieces that are actually happening. And we can look and see. Now here if I want, I could stop and say I could schedule a phone call. Here we could talk about adding additional expenses, all the next steps that we're going on. We're building this profile, building this summary that can go through. I can keep talking about adding everyday living expenses. So here we have Voyant, we have systems here we could integrate with a banking system and bring over data automatically from that system. In the next phase, we could talk about, and I'm just going to cheat and add one big expense and say, let's just say the family spends $120,000 a year. We'll add that into the plan. That's going to draw and update our picture. So now we see there's a pretty solid need line going into the system going forward. Once again, we can review our expenses and look at the phases that are here. We can start adding finances in the system, and I can switch the order of these. I can change the different elements and pieces that go with it. Really, it's a matter of deciding how I want to add things. So if I wanted to add an employment in today's dollars, I'm just going to call this one job and say, let's give him a current salary of $160,000 a year. He's employed. I'm not going to go crazy with bonuses, commissions. We can keep adding to this picture. We can see that, oh, look, well, you're doing okay. Taxes are hitting you, but you're doing okay until you get to retirement, and then when you retire, well, we don't have any money. Obviously, this is a picture we're generating. You'll notice inside the system as well, we can start collecting all sorts of other accounts. So here we can collect retirement plans, pensions, anything you can think of we can include in the system that we want to put into the system. Here, if we had, and we do have, things like we've integrated with firms like Plaid, MX, Quovo, Yodlee, we can automatically pull up that data here on the consumer side or from the back office system of the provider that we're working with who might already have this information. What this leads us to is when we're finally done, is we have this starting picture of where a client is, what they can afford, what they can't afford, some of the pieces that we're actually looking at and get a sense for it. And I didn't create much in depth here in terms of what we want to look at or talk about, but you get a sense of this as the client can do it. And again, I should make the point that can it look different? Absolutely. So here it's part of the platform in general. As again, Voyant is an API first solution in terms of what we're doing. So here's a version that'll look very familiar to what I demoed a few moments ago, but you'll notice that, things are a bit changed in terms of here. It's got someone else's branding. They've decided to use a different series of goals to talk about things very specific to what they want to talk about. Not as much in terms of hints, but obviously it fits branding, it fits the elements that goes with it and the things they want to discuss. It works very similarly. It uses their integrations, but again, it's personalizable and customizable to the firm we're working with and the jurisdiction we're working with, in this case, Ireland itself. So all those cases we can look and use that. Now, as I go back to another piece of the puzzle here, when I go back and talk about what we were doing before, one of the things I'll go back and we can look for is, as I said, we created a client record. And all along the way, I'll see if I can find my plan here that I just created. So here's our plan today, James and Dolly Madison. So that plan that we created in the game, I can open up an advisor. And we can look at that and add details. Anything I add here on the advisor side is exposed into the game. The client can take it back over and play with it. Now, they're not working on the original version of the plan. They're actually working on a what-if plan. So as I talk about in the Advisor Go demonstration, when you create a what-if plan, They never mess with yours. We make a secret copy of it. They're playing in a consumer version of it. But everything that I entered into the system, the goals I entered in, anything I enter in, is now available for discussion, and we can take it over. So it allows this two-way interaction when we're building the plan. It allows people to work at times that are convenient for them and in ways that are convenient. But really the main goal is to get the client engaged in the process, understanding that we're going to do something different here rather than just talk about percentages, and really focused on making it personal to themselves so that the advisor can save time, be efficient, and then talk about all the places where they can add benefit here in terms of helping them achieve goals, whether it's cash flow, whether it's saving for something big. But now we're having this much different style of a collaborative conversation than we might otherwise have had. And that makes a very, very powerful piece of the puzzle when we're dealing with it.